Hello, I'm Charles Kovess, Australasia's passion provocateur. Welcome to this week's episode of the Charles Kovess Show, episode 198. And I welcome you whether you're watching on Rumble or on YouTube or listening via one of the many podcasting platforms. Thanks for being here. I remind you that we have a new format for the show. The foundational principles that lie at the heart of the show aren't changing. However, instead of exploring one big idea each week, I will explore two or three current, challenging topics or issues that we face in the world, and then explore how the principles of this show can help you to effectively and elegantly handle those issues and similar ones. Instead of sharing 6 resources each week, I will share 1 or 2 resources that will be relevant to those 2 or 3 issues that I raise. The show notes now give you links to the foundational principles of the show and background about me, as well as the links to my websites, charleskovess.com and kovess.com, where you can find many useful resources for your life. So let's discuss this week's big impact issues and how you can elegantly and effectively handle them with the self-awareness and passion principles. Firstly, last night, Julie and I went to see a play written by Michael Gray Griffith and produced by Rohana Hayes from the Wolves Theatre in Melbourne. It's called Marooned. It's been shown over 80 times, and it explores the critical issue, the crucial issue, the important issue of suicide. It is a brilliantly written play. It gets rave reviews, and I'm giving it a rave review. Both Julie and I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's the story of 4 people who have committed suicide, or maybe they haven't. In fact, they are marooned in an afterlife state. The dialogue, while the 4 are trapped in this state, the dialogue explores why they committed suicide, what was going through their minds before they committed suicide, their purposeless lives, the pressure that they put themselves under, the loss of hope, the question of what this life is all about. It explores the rat on a treadmill syndrome. How many people live their lives in such a treadmill state? Now, of course, if you are, life is incredibly complicated. You've often heard me talk about the fact that you're a weirdo, I'm a weirdo, each one of us is a weirdo. But the lack of awareness of why we do things, and the dialogue brought that out beautifully. Why did you commit suicide? What about all those people who love you and leaving them behind? I wasn't thinking about them. And then becomes the question of courage. Well, you've got challenges in life. Why check out? Why blame other people? This willingness to take responsibility. And this show also is about learning to say, I am responsible for my life. I can control what happens in my life. I am not the victim. This is such a big issue. So if you don't take responsibility, you become a victim. You then explore there was no exploration about any of these people being insane. There was family rejection about being gay, very cleverly done. But this whole issue of understanding what life is about, that's what this show tries to give you. And your exploration of saying, hey, what am I actually passionate about? Am I selling out my passion just for this illusion of security and living life in such a way that, in fact, it takes away all hope? It's a salutary reminder of questioning why you do what you do, which I hope this show helps you to do. The show is called Marooned by Michael Gray Griffith. It's running in Australia. It can be put on anywhere in a very simple environment, a very simple setting, and the power of the dialogue is wonderful. No one walked out on the show, and Michael Gray Griffith, the writer, has said in the 80 plus times it's been shown, nobody walks out. It has a profound impact with an amazing twist at the end. If you would like, and it literally can be put on very easily at various clubs, small theatres, big theatres, RSL clubs around the country, and the Army, the Australian Army has been reported as saying it wants to put this show on because the psychological lessons from it are profoundly important and valuable. So contact me if you would like connections to have this show run anywhere in Australia and could even go international. The second aspect of suicide I want to touch on is an article in this weekend's Australian magazine. Now, the weekend Australian newspaper magazine. Here's what it looks like. And it's a picture of the president of the Australian Medical Association. Now, I have no time for the Australian Medical Association. It is an organisation that follows the big pharma message. However, this article is by Dr. Steve Robson, the current president, and he talks about his attempt at suicide 30 years ago. I would never commit suicide while I'm drinking coffee. I should say I would never commit suicide when I have coffee available to me. Now, this is an interesting question. Would I give? No, I wouldn't. I'm being playful here. Now, and that's the point about Marooned. Marooned had plenty of humour in it as it was exploring this important issue. And, you know, your whole perspective on suicide will vary depending on whether or not you believe in reincarnation. It's an interesting point. You think about it. If there is reincarnation, then suicide is not the disaster that it is. It's a bad thing, but do you believe in reincarnation? So coming back to Steve Robson, 30 years ago he was going to commit suicide. He was a young doctor. He was in despair about some treatments that he had done. He was under huge pressure, as the interns are, and the system puts these interns under enormous pressure. And in my view, from what I know, and I've been involved in health since 1965 in various ways, the system pressures these young doctors to just follow the system. Well, Steve Robson is grateful for some colleagues who came to save him just before he was about to inject himself with a big dose of insulin. And he talks about how the system doesn't care about the carers. Well, I say that the doctors don't care about their patients. I am appalled at what's happening in hospitals in America, in Canada, in the UK, in Australia. I have direct experience of patients in hospital where the system doesn't care what their unique needs are, when the National Code for Doctors requires that they treat each patient individually. All they want to do is follow their protocol. And then in this article, that's why this is a resource that I'm recommending for you this week, to read this article and think about it. Steve Robson says, ultimately, the system that provides our healthcare must value those who work in it. I don't disagree with that. It is not enough to leave young doctors unsupported and adrift in a system that is so important to so many people. Patients have a right to expect that they are treated by people who are functioning at the highest level, not crushed by the demands of the system. Yet over the years since I first wrote of my experience and made my plea that other young doctors do not suffer like I did, nothing of substance has happened. Note that. This is the president of the AMA. Nothing of substance has happened. That's because the AMA has abjectly failed its obligation to patients. And that's why I want doctors to seriously consider joining AMPS, the Australian Medical Professionals Society, because AMA has failed the doctors because the doctors put up with the system. And it was the doctors who allowed lockdowns to happen, because had they spoken up, it would not have happened. Now, the doctors are trained to follow the system, and the system is destroying them because the system is also destroying patients. So this plea says there's a crippling sense that nobody cares for the carers. Well, I say if the carers properly cared for the patients, it would change the whole system. The second issue, and this is where the self-awareness and passion quest comes in, the doctors have to speak up. You see, doctors, I've had experience with very wide variety of them through moderating the medical doctors for COVID ethics meetings. Many doctors, when said, why don't you question the system? Their answer is, I have a mortgage to pay. I say that's a disgrace. I say that sacrificing your patients for paying your mortgage is a disgrace. I'm calling it out now, and I call on doctors to now speak up when they know that the protocol, the system, is harming patients. And if that happened, doctors would be well cared about. So the lesson here is speak the truth. Speak up. Don't play victim. And this is all about the president of the AMA saying the system has to change. No, doctors have to change their behaviour, and I call on them to do so. You might get I'm passionate about this topic, and I am, because I see the murders that are happening in hospitals around the world, and I call them murders. There are also manslaughters, and by the way, recent data published has shown that medical malpractice, medical misadventure is now the largest cause of deaths in America, more than heart attacks, more than cancer. Bad medical treatment. How about that? Third issue on medical issues is the wonderful work of Mind Medicine Australia over the last 5 years in having in Australia MDMA and psilocybin legalised, psychedelic drugs legalised for mental health issues. It took 5 years, but you can only get access to these wonderful drugs when a psychiatrist prescribes them. Well, guess how long it takes to get a meeting with a new psychiatrist? It takes 6 weeks. 6 weeks before you get your meeting. So you've got people who are suicidal. These drugs are proven to have a magnificent impact compared to people, or very quickly, and compared to being on pharmaceutical drugs, which have all of these effects. They're called side effects, but they're actual effects. You try to get off these pharmaceutical drugs, it leads you to be suicidal. Listen to my interview on TNT radio with Vanessa B about her husband who committed suicide. And so in the Australian system, which is leading edge in the world, only psychiatrists trained in these two psychedelic drugs can prescribe them, but you can't even get a sensible meeting with a psychiatrist, and then the cost of doing so is out of this world. On top of that, the regime around medicinal cannabis has eased a little bit, but it's also too expensive because of the costs of regulation. So what I'm saying is there are wonderful solutions, and the practitioners are not calling for those solutions. Again, they're not speaking up because they're scared of speaking up. You see, that's the issue. The health professionals are scared of speaking up because AHPRA and the various regulatory bodies in countries around the world are controlled by Big Pharma. They want this current system happening where your only solution is pharmaceutical drugs. They don't want any other wonderful drugs, and they're doing this in the name of safety. I say it's BS. It's not about safety, it's about money. Fourthly, I raise again, and I will keep raising the issue of the German-US lawyer Rainer Fulmich, who's in prison being tortured by the German government. He should not be in prison. It's a civil matter that's at play here, and I'm going to keep shining a light on it. I urge all of you to take an interest in the case globally. I urge you to write to your local German embassy. I'm working on TNT radio to shine a light on his case, to shine a light on the outrageous behaviour of the German government that kidnapped Rainer, took him to Germany, has had him psychologically tortured, which is torture, in prison, have put him into solitary confinement for no reason, has not granted him bail for no reason, and the law is being imposed by a judge that is behaving in a totally biased way. Why? Because the German government is scared of Rainer Fulmich. Rainer is a man fighting for freedom and truth and justice. He's fighting for his values and going through this incarceration process for his values. What are you willing to do for your values? And if you don't know what they are, that's what the self-awareness and passion quest is about. Get clear on your values so you know what's worth fighting for. So my TNT guest this week is Dr. Matt Shelton. He is one of the founders of New Zealand Doctors Speaking Out with Science Against Government Narrative. He's a brave doctor who is doing what I'm urging more doctors to do. He has lost his income earning ability because he spoke out, because he stood up for his values. At 6 p.m. on the Mind Medicine program on TNT, you can always see the replays. This week I have a 2-hour episode. In the second half, I'll be interviewing Sharon Cousins, who will talk about the DAEN system for recording adverse events from medical interventions. You must know this information, because if you don't record adverse events from any medical treatment, then the system says, oh no, we've had no reports of that. You must report adverse events. So tune in for that. My resources are this article in this week's Weekend Australia magazine, available online. Look it up, Steve Robson. And I again call on the AMA to wake up to itself. And I urge doctors, by the way, less than 25% of doctors are members of the AMA. I urge doctors to join AMPS. You'll have a much better outcome, and other health professionals. AMPS is for all health professionals who are regulated by AHPRA, the Australian Health Practitioners Regulatory Agency. And a song that I think someone referred me to this week, called The Eve of Destruction, 1965 song by Barry Maguire. And you tell me over and over and over again, my friend, how you don't believe we're on the eve of destruction. Well, there's some great lyrics in this, 1965, and there's a verse in here. It's worth listening to because these protest songs were powerful, and many people think we're on the eve of destruction now. That's a good way to think, because then we will take action. And this week's also important because the World Health Organization, sometimes called the World Health Organization, is meeting in Geneva to try to bring through some fraudulent new regulations and a new treaty. But part of the lyrics go like this. Yeah, my blood's so mad, feels like coagulating. I'm sitting here just contemplating. I can't twist the truth. It knows no regulation. Handful of senators don't pass legislation, and marches alone can't bring integration. When human respect is disintegrating, this whole crazy world is just too frustrating. Great lyrics. Listen to the song. Be inspired to live life on your terms, to fight for what you believe is the right thing to fight for. Okay, that's it. A little bit longer than I was expecting, but that's what happens when you get passionate. I hope today's episode makes a beneficial difference to your life. A life that I believe is meant to be all that you are capable of making it. If you're new to the show, click on the links for the foundational principles and the background about me, and also the links to our websites. Again, thanks for watching or listening. And until our next show, may your week be full of health-giving and energy-giving passion, learning, fun, fulfillment, and attitude of embracing the challenges that this wonderful gift of life throws up to us. Have a great week. See you next week. Bye.